Go on record to say I feel very blessed because every time I'm here, Amy's providing the music. Not that I wouldn't be grateful for anyone else providing the music, but you're my favorite. So, yeah, okay. All right, as he pulls his jeans up. We are live, right? Okay. I was remembering an interview I did many years ago with Betty Williams. It was a Irish brogue that she has. I love those Irish accents. Anytime the laureates get together, off in the corner, there's his Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, playing like two naughty little boys, pushing each other out of chairs. And she shared a story where there was a fundraiser going on for a very serious cause, and Desmond Tutu was the keynote speaker. And he gave this really beautiful, inspiring, from the heart message to the people. And it was a fundraiser, so once it was done, the music started playing and there was food, but he was one of the first ones out on the dance floor. I've never forgotten that. And of course, then together they had that book, The Book of Joy. If you haven't ever read it, you might want to read it, especially now. Because both those men were dealing with such atrocious acts taking place each in their own countries, and yet somehow they were also able to keep their joy. And that's always impressed me, and that's what I'm working on, ing, working, not arrived at, myself. As we navigate this strange and anxious world, choosing joy becomes more than a personal act of resilience. I believe it's a gesture of hope. Joy can serve as a propulsive force, helping us to reclaim our humanity and promote resilience and hope. So why is it so challenging to choose joy in the midst of darkness? There could even be some here today who are quietly thinking, how dare him speak about joy? Didn't you hear what happened last night? Don't you know what's going on in the streets every day in our country? Not surprisingly, the idea of claiming joy often seems like a distraction from what is truly pressing in life and the issues the world and our country are facing. In moments of stress, anxiety, and depression, joy often feels like a selfish or guilty pursuit, precisely because everyone is going through so much. Drawing on our activist mentality, my mentality, it's infinitely easier to focus on the revolution than to find a place for pleasure and joy. This sentiment is affirmed by one of my favorite writers who's passed away, Bell Hooks, and she wrote, "I often find it easier to be teaching or giving to others, and often struggle with the place of my own pleasure and joy." Joy lets us reclaim our humanity. There's going to be a few sentences I've even put the yellow marker on for myself to highlight if you don't remember anything else. Joy lets us reclaim our humanity. Joy is a sign of vibrant life, of thriving. It is one of the things that makes us truly human. So depriving a group of people of joy, whether through an outright ban or through economic means, is a method of dehumanization. Reclaiming those sources of joy is a way to diffuse the dehumanized. You know, when you study dictators throughout history, they often attack a couple of key areas. They attack education in various forms, and they attack the arts in various forms. And nothing upsets a dictator more than when he sees his people joyful. He wants them crying. He wants them sobbing. He wants them breaking to the point where I'll do anything you want us to do. That's why joy is so important. Holocaust survivor and author Elie Wiesel described a memory of a fellow prisoner trading a ration of bread for materials with which to piece together a makeshift menorah during Hanukkah. Shocked that the man would trade something so essential to his survival Weissel asked him, Hanukkah in Auschwitz? And the man replied, especially in Auschwitz. The more dehumanizing the circumstances, the more we need these markers of our humanity. As people who believe in putting love in action, which is what this community is certainly all about, we're primed to take care of others, respond to crises, mobilize, and tackle the multiple injustices that we find in the world and in our country. However, we also have to pay attention to joy. Otherwise, we might spiral into despair. Finding joy, therefore, means doing the hard work of shifting our focus as often as possible to appreciate the good that happens. Remember when I shared many months ago, acknowledge the darkness, but don't stare at the darkness, because the darkness will stare right back at you. Acknowledge the darkness, in other words, know what's going on, but then focus on the light. Let me repeat what I just shared. However, we also have to pay attention to joy. Otherwise, we might spiral in despair. Finding joy, therefore, means doing the hard work. We're not going to feel like it. It's hard, but it's a choice. I've read so many quotes, which I won't bore you with this morning, on how joy is a choice. When you study the civil rights movement, when you study so many other movements where people were repressed in ways that just defies my imagination, they would also take time to dance and play music and dance. They did that for a reason, so they wouldn't lose their hope. So I say, now's the time to dance. Now's the time to have more Amy music and so many other musicians out there. Crank it up. Baby, I'm in my car a lot. My hospice career is almost done. Means I do a lot of driving, and all I do is listen to music. All I do is seat dancing. I remember a time, actually, it's not in my notes, so maybe I shouldn't share it. All right. So I'm driving in my car, windows down. It was warm and not that warm. And I'm singing at the top of my lungs this song. And it happens to be a Shania Twain song. I feel like a woman, Well, unbeknownst to me, I'm singing it loudly. And there's a pickup truck with two guys next to me getting ready to turn. And I'm waiting for the light to turn, and I'm feeling eyeballs on me, and they're pointing, laughing at me. My face gets red like it probably is now. I scrunch down in my feet, light turns green, I beeline through, and I start singing again. Feel like a woman. Why? Because it brought me joy. I dance all the time. As my daughter says, no, Dad, you move all the time. You don't dance, but you move. But I like to think I dance. Little things to bring joy in our lives, to recapture our humanity. It's how we gather the energy to do the important work. Connecting to and claiming joy is about keeping the flame and fire of my activism alive, because joy is a beautiful generator of hope. I'm still waiting, to be honest. I remember, well, I was a little kid at the time, but I remember watching it on TV back in the 60s when all those movements were happening. What was essential at the core of all that? Music. The music was. And I had a few friends ask me lately, where's the music? Where's the musicians? I mean, there's people like Springsteen and others that are speaking out, playing out. But I say we need more musicians to take a stand. I said now more than ever we need the arts to take a stand, not take a back seat, full front, full front. Even in the Old Testament, when the armies of Israel would go to war and they would march, who went first? It was the musicians. Did you know that? It wasn't the army, it was the musicians. And there's a scripture that says God inhabits the praises of his people. Well, that spoke to me also about joy and about music and what things like that do, because the arts, visual, all the other kind of arts that we have, it inspires us. It calls us to recognize beauty, if you will. So connecting to that is very important. Archbishop Desmond Tutu reminds us, give the world your love, your service, your healing, but also give it your joy. And one of my favorite Hafez poems says this: I sometimes forget that I was created for joy. My mind is too busy. My heart is too heavy for me to remember that I have been called to dance the sacred dance of life. I was created to smile, to love, to be lifted up. Oh, sacred one, untangle my feet from all that ensnares. Free my soul that we might dance and that our dancing might be contagious. Selah. Ooh. Or as Al Pacino would say, hoo-ah on that one. Joy is a political strategy. In a world where we are inundated by stories of our powerlessness, claiming our right to joy enables us to revision ourselves in a way that's meaningful and important to us rather than conforming. It's hugely important. Claiming joy politically also has a collective element. Think about that. Employing joy as a strategy of solidarity that Ross Gay reminded us in his writings provides us with an emotional tool to nurture optimism for the future. That is key, folks. Now, I post on Facebook about every day. I don't stay on Facebook a lot, but so many of the posts I've seen, they're such downer posts. They just remind me, yes, it's bleak. Yes, it's like, I know that already. We need hope. We need joy also. Not an either or, it's an and. Joy is a practice that helps us cultivate optimism and confidence that the work we do in the present has a greater significant purpose. Claiming joy reminds us that love, connection, and beauty. Now I feel like I'm sounding like Professor Keating in Dead Poets Society. Claiming joy reminds us that love, connection, and beauty are available in abundance to us, and we're all worthy of living a full and beautiful life. Everyone. Joy can connect us by affirming our collective humanity. And as often reminded myself and have reminded my friends, those who decide to go out and hit the streets, if you will, when a protest is coming by, make sure you're not going out of anger, because anger begets anger. Make sure you're going out of love, because it's only when we fall in love with something that we can't help but want to protect it. I remember when my brother, very young, ran out in the middle of the street and a car hit him. It wasn't serious, but we heard. And my dad, who was getting ready for back surgery, sitting in his recliner, popped up, ran out of the house to see if his son was okay. I'll never forget that. My dad, for him, that was a choiceless choice. He loved his son. He did everything he could to protect him. Those of us who love our democracy, those of us who love the fact that we're all connected, irregardless of our nationality, color of skin, our beliefs, our lifestyle. If we can fall in love with that deeper and deeper and let that love go from our head, which is knowledge, into our heart, which is illumination, that's where the life changes go, is illumination, then we'll go out with the right attitudes and probably even sing some songs while we're out there, stoking up the joy like it often happened back in those turbulent 60s. So, tips for connecting to joy based on my life in action, such as is. Make the connection between our activist politics and joy. In other words, the first step is to recognize that joy is not a luxury or a privilege, but necessary in our service to humanity. As I said earlier, It's a choice. Don't wait to feel like it. I'm not joyful yet. I'm really... Make the choice for that. Remind yourselves of that. Remind yourselves that although there's darkness in the world, there's also light. Although there's ugliness in the world, there's also great beauty. Although bombs have been dropped, there's also little children and men and women in every conceivable country that aren't enemies of ours. Politics makes the enemy. Most people have everything in common, as Gay mentioned earlier in that writing. Let's focus on that. Let's reach out to one another as brothers and sisters, knowing that we're all just walking each other home, as Ram Dass reminds us. So number one, make the connection between our activist politics and joy. 2, take little joy steps. By the way, none of this is profound, right? You can probably figure this out for yourself. Take little joy steps. Take care of yourself in small ways. Slow down on watching the news. Oy vey, slow down on watching the news. All you got to see is just a little bit, then turn it over. Now, the Pacers are on tonight, but that's stressful for me. So what I tend to do is watch maybe the first quarter. In the last few games, I'll say, I'm going to go to bed. I'll wake up and see what happens. Well, they won that last game, so I don't know. Tonight, I'll have to see what I'm going to do. Build happiness breaks into your daily life in simple ways. Ask yourself this question: what brings you joy? I'm asking that question because most of us don't ask that question. What are the little things that bring you joy? What book, what quote, what music, what activities bring you joy? Now would be the time to do a lot of that, don't you think? The other question I often ask in workshops is, what feeds your spirit? What feeds your spirit? We tend to give all the time. And by giving out and not taking in, we can be pretty dry and then susceptible to anxiety and depression and worry. So what feeds your spirit? And ask yourself that question very quickly and come up with the answer. See what pops up. Like, what feeds my spirit? Candles. Lit candles. What feeds my spirit? Dancing in my kitchen. What feeds my spirit? Going on long walks in a park. What feeds my spirit? You know, my dog, my cat. What feeds my spirit? Classic soul music when I dance, or Shania Twain. What feeds my spirit? I'm doing a lot of this stuff lately because I want to stay active. I want to use my voice as long as I have it, because none of us know how long we have, to be just one voice of many voices collectively, to help those people, those voiceless people out there who need a voice for them. But in order for me to do that, I have to keep my joy up. As I said, I learned that the hard way from not doing it years ago. Little joy steps. 3, pay attention to your body. Make time for exercise, even if it's just the shuffle. Even if it's just my 92-year-old mom shuffles, but she shuffles with the best of them, 92. Walking, hiking, yoga, running, dancing, seat dancing, so everyone can dance. 4, focus on gratitude. Make a gratitude list every day. I can't tell you how many times I've been in presentations where I hear that, but if you were to ask Richard, well, do you do it daily? I would say, no, I'm busted. I know about it. I just don't do it. But there's something about being grateful for what we have, not for what we don't have, that kind of rewires our brain into an attitude of gratitude. Appreciate what you already have, because gratitude is at the heart of contentment. And that's part of self-care right now, because we don't know what's going on. A lot's happening right now. And maybe even while we're sitting in here, more stuff has happened. I don't know. But we've got to stay in that, I call that even place. Not too high, not too low. We're just even. We're going to stay there. We're going to be that light. We're going to be that love. We're going to cultivate and stoke up that joy. And then finally, create connection and community, like you're all doing here, or like the hucksters do once a month. Pretty impressive about those fever tickets, by the way, because you can't get them, so that was cool. We yearn for deeper connection and a sense of belonging. And as I've shared before, now more than ever, we need communities like this for people out there who are desperately looking to belong somewhere and don't feel like they fit in. And that still breaks my heart, that there are people out there like that. So, In closing, I love it when a minister says that. I love this quote. Yeah, someone got that joke. Okay. This is one of my favorite poets. There's Mary Oliver, but there's also L.R. Nost. She writes this: "Here's to the bridge builders, the hand holders, the light bringers, those extraordinary souls wrapped in ordinary lives who quietly weave threads of humanity into an inhumane world. They are the unsung heroes in a world at war with itself. They are the whisperers of hope that peace is possible. Look for them in this present darkness. Light your candle with their flame, and then go. Build bridges. Hold hands. Bring light to a dark and desperate world. Be the hero you are looking for. Peace is possible. It begins with us. And so I say, in order to do that, consciously choose joy. Choose joy. Choose joy. Blessed be.